Maggie Kent, thank you so much.
Thank you, Maggie.
It's now Action News at 5. Shari Williams alongside Rick Williams. Of course, we are continuing our coverage on the breaking news that is gripping the Delaware Valley right now for just over an hour and 10 minutes now. That involving 2 officers injured who are responding to a shooting in East Lansdowne just before 4 o'clock this afternoon.
Yeah, to set the scene for you, this was this house, which used to be a house actually, was 58 Lewis Avenue in East Lansdowne, Delaware County. Smoke continuing to billow from the remains of this home. As we saw just over an hour ago, when we first come on the air, the house was fully engulfed in flames. As police were arriving, various law enforcement units from throughout the county arriving along with fire crews, but they could not tackle the flames because there was word of an active shooter inside that house. 2 officers injured. They are now being hospitalized at Penn Presbyterian Hospital. We'll go there live in just a moment. But again, it has been a very fluid scene for just over an hour now here in Delaware County. We continue to try to piece together exactly what happened and answer some of the questions that have been unfolding throughout the afternoon.
We do know that this all started with a call for help, a response to a child being shot inside of a home. We're told when officers arrived, that's when they took on fire, and at this point 2 officers are being treated for their injuries at Penn Presbyterian Hospital.
Yeah, we're still trying to learn the status of the 11-year-old child inside that house who we're told is injured or suffered an injury. We're going to get the very latest now. Action News reporter John Paul, who is live at the scene, has been there since 4 o'clock. And John, what's the very latest at this hour?
Well, Rick, I'm right at the corner of Baltimore and Lewis Avenue. If you look past me here, this is where the situation unfolded, just about maybe a half block to a block down that way. The smoke has turned to a whiter color and is getting lower, which means that they are making progress. It's getting more choking. Like you can really smell it where I'm standing right now. They're pouring water on this. They just let the firefighters go in the last 5 to 10 minutes to start really battling this fire. And it looks like they have a ladder truck out there, and looks like they're spraying water on it right now, trying to get this fire put out. But it does look like they have this scene secure. When I had talked to the firefighters earlier, they told me they could not go in there until they were given the all clear. That came a few minutes ago. That's when we saw them all walk down the street and they started fighting this fire. We have seen SWAT team members down there as well, but they have just slowly been walking there. So it looks like they have this situation under control right now. I had been talking to neighbors here who had heard the rapid gunfire come from that home. I talked to one neighbor who saw officers return fire after that they saw those initial shots and heard those initial shots. Other neighbors ran for cover. They said officers were yelling active shooter, telling them to go into their home. One neighbor hid in a neighboring business that locked up the doors to try to protect everyone inside. They didn't know what was going on other than they heard the gunshots and heard officers yelling active shooter. Another neighbor saw at least 2 officers being taken away in ambulances, and that brings us to where we are now. After that house caught fire, they had to let it burn. They would not let the firefighters in there, so it really did burn to the ground and started to spread to the other homes. And that's what they're trying to prevent, this fire from spreading any further. Obviously, they can't save the house that was burning, but they can prevent it from spreading anymore. We're seeing the water just rushing down this street now, going into this storm drain that I'm standing right by. And that is the latest that we have right now. Rick, Shar, if you have any questions, I'd be happy to try to answer those for you.
Yeah, well, John, it was quite the scene when we saw the firefighters who were actually being held back in a staging area and then finally getting that opportunity to get closer to the threat. Usually firefighters, they rush to the scene to get to work right away. Not the case this time.
Yeah, I mean, they almost looked anxious to go. I mean, they had to sit there and watch. They're trained to go in and knock these flames down. They weren't allowed to do that. They had to stay here until they were given the all clear. It just wasn't safe for them to go. They didn't know the situation. The only people going down there were fully armed SWAT teams. They were armored trucks going down that way, police officers. They weren't letting the firefighters or the medics down that way. I did see one medic, though, with the bulletproof vest who went down that way. But, yeah, they had to sit there and watch as this thing burned and spread, Shari.
Yeah, well, I mean, it's just not what we see. This obviously is very far from the type of 911 call that we are accustomed to covering for this neighborhood right now.
Right.
So much happening for those who are in this zone of where the breaking news is happening. And to know that they were trying to alert neighbors, John, with active shooter for those neighbors.
Yeah.
All right. Well, John, stand by. All right, stand by, John. We want to go to Becca Henderson, who's also at the scene, to give us the latest from where she is from her vantage point. Becca, you've been there for about an hour now. What else has transpired since you've been there?
Rick, a lot has changed in the past hour since we've been here. We're on the other side of Lewis from where John Paul is, it seems. And I want to show you my vantage point of this smoke that is constantly changing colors as firefighters are continuing to fight this. It's been a lot of developments over this past little over an hour since the first call came out. That first call, again, of course, police officers were called. East Lansdowne and Lansdowne police were called for reports of an 11-year-old child who was shot further down on Lewis Avenue. I'm told that as soon as they got to the scene here, that they were fired upon, and 2 officers were shot and taken to Penn Presbyterian. Since that initial shooting happened, though, just after 3:50 p.m., again, I'm told there had been no other shots other than that, but that suspect did retreat into the house. So over the last hour or so, as firefighters were not, of course, pouring water on those flames at first, they were assessing the threat. We've seen police officers and first responders from pretty much every borough in town in Delaware County who have been here assisting in this fire. And just in the past couple minutes, they've really been able to start fighting this, I should say, as the smoke has drastically changed colors. The back of the house had collapsed at points. There were cars on fires, and it appears some other structures were beginning to put on fire as well. As this fire has increased in intensity, and we can see just that billowing smoke, we were pushed back for our own safety. And a lot of the neighbors in the area, as you can imagine, if you lived here, everyone was out of their houses trying to figure out what's going on. So a lot of this scene, too, has been police and first responders doing crowd control, making sure that everyone could be safe in this situation.
Yeah, Becca, as we continue to look from some of the chopper video at the scene, you mentioned the neighbors, and we were wondering throughout the afternoon, had there been some type of shelter-in-place order, because this is a relatively quiet residential area that certainly exploded into chaos and drama. What have the neighbors have been telling you that they've heard from law enforcement as whether they should stay home, stay inside? You've obviously been talking to some neighbors who've come outside to try and investigate exactly what's going on along their street.
Rick, a lot of those neighbors have been outside, but law enforcement have been trying to push them further and further back from the scene, of course, for their own safety. I do know that a couple people were trying to get out of the area that police were in. You know, they have different appointments throughout the day, stuff like that. But while they couldn't leave the scene, they could walk out of here. Police trying to keep people as far back as possible.
All right, Becca, thank you.
All right, we want to go now to Action News reporter John Paul, who is there being joined by the district attorney there on the scene with you.
Right.
John, what can you tell us?
Yeah. Sorry, Rick. The district attorney, Jack Solstheimer, agreed to talk to us about what he knows. What can you tell us about the situation that unfolded here?
Sure. 2 officers were responding to an emergency call this afternoon, a 911 call about an 11-year-old possibly being shot at the property we're at right now. They responded, and they immediately took gunfire from the house. Somebody shot at them. 2 officers had been injured. My understanding is they are going to be okay. They're in stable condition, but we're saying our prayers for them right now. Everybody in Delaware County should be praying for these 2 officers who ran towards fire when everybody else can run away from it. As you can see right now, every agency in Delaware County is out here responding to the scene. The individual inside set fire to the house, and it's been burning for quite a while now. They are putting the fire under control, and then we're going to deal with whether or not the shooter is still alive inside the house. So it's still an active crime scene. There's a lot still going on out here. I'm heading over to the hospital to see these 2 officers and to offer them my prayers and my thanks for what they've done.
I mean, do you know anything about the 11-year-old? Do you know how she's doing? Have you been?
We had no idea if there even is an 11-year-old. All we know is that there was a call that was the call they were responding to.
So it could have been a trap, is what you?
It could be. We have no evidence right now that it was or it wasn't. All I know is that the officers were responding to that call to our 911 center. then as they came to the scene, they immediately were shot at by somebody from inside the house. So we've got no independent knowledge whether or not there is an 11-year-old, was an 11-year-old shot, who was inside the house. All that is to be determined because somebody set fire to the house. The shots have now stopped. The fire has largely burned out the house. And we're at the point now where officers are not only just taking control of the fire, but they're going to go in and make entry and try to stabilize the situation and find out the exact questions you're asking. Who was inside? Was there an 11-year-old girl? And if so, what happened?
You don't know anything about the person who was in there or anything like that?
Nothing.
Correct?
Nothing at this point. We're still trying to get inside the house to find out what happened. The house is largely burned out. I don't know if the person has burned himself to death. We don't know. All we know is that it's been burning for quite a while. It's largely burnt out. Police officers and fire department are here on scene. They're heroically putting that fire out, then to do the next phase of this, which is to go inside the house and see what happened.
I mean, Jack, we were all here for a news conference about a deadly shooting involving two 15-year-olds. And not 30 minutes later, this happened. When you heard this, I mean, just tell me what was going through your mind.
It's incredible. The level of violence that can happen in our communities because of gunfire and guns in the hands of the wrong people is just out of control. You're right. We were just together a couple hours ago talking about one 15-year-old who killed another 15-year-old with a ghost gun. And now we've got officers trying to respond to a call, which is an emergency call, and they take gunfire. That's just horrendous. That should not happen in the wealthiest country in the history of the world. So we've got to, as a society, deal with these problems. We as a law enforcement community are dealing with the situation at hand and making sure that our guys who run towards danger so the rest of us can run away are given the best care possible. So please, everyone, just pray for these two officers. I understand they're in stable condition, but I want to see them firsthand.
And that's where you're going right now?
Heading right now to the hospital.
Okay. And just, I know you're in a rush here. Do you know if the 911 call originated from the house that caught fire?
We don't know that. We do know an individual called, and from what I'm told, there was gunfire in the background that the 911 caller thought they heard. So it was an emergency call, and appropriately so, these officers immediately responded, came to the house, and were going to be ready to deal with the situation. My understanding, again, gunfire came directly at them. That's when they were hurt. Other officers responded. Delaware County, you can look here and you'll see every department in Delaware County represented here today. Everybody comes when somebody is in danger, and we're proud of our law enforcement community and the work they do.
All right, Jack, thanks. I know you need to get to the hospital. Thank you for talking to us.
Sir.
You just heard from the district attorney here in Delaware County, Jack Stolzheimer. I just saw him walking away from the scene, was able to talk to him. Rick, Shari, that is the latest. We've gotten a lot of new information coming out of that.
Yeah, that was very helpful information in regards to how the call first came in. Not really clear then exactly who placed the call, but the 911 operator could hear gunfire in the background.
Yeah, and we know now that this was a case of arson as that crime scene continues to unfold. Let's go to Action News reporter Andy McCormick, who is live at the hospital where the two officers were taken. And Andy, what's the latest from there?
Well, like we just heard from the district attorney, Jack Stolzheimer, he's talking about how they're both in stable condition. We have heard that they are both alert and talking, and they are expected to be okay. We were here when we saw several family members arrive for those officers. One officer is an East Lansdowne officer. The other officer is from Lansdowne. Now, their police chiefs have already arrived here about 15 minutes ago, and they're inside talking with those officers and additionally with their family members as well. They're also joined by the Upper Darby Police Superintendent Tim Bernhardt. And one of the things that you're seeing here is the assembling of multiple police jurisdictions, including Philadelphia Police. In fact, Police Commissioner Kevin Bethel just walked out of the emergency room with a number of Philadelphia's top brass. They're out here to show their support. They're helping with traffic control out here, along with the University of Pennsylvania Police as well. Now, as far as East Lansdowne, which is only about 3.5 miles away from Penn Presbyterian, this is the closest trauma hospital, so that's why that they were brought here quickly. And of course, Lansdowne is the next door, the police department next door as well, and Upper Darby is close by, and that's why they are all assisting each other. So at this point, we're expecting to hear more. They are expected to have a press briefing here. They're waiting for the district attorney, who we just saw with John Paul, expected to be here in about a half hour. And some of the things that came out of that interview with John Paul too is one of the things questions that several people out here have been wondering. And in addition, those police officers wondering too is if there was an 11-year-old girl that was inside of that home. So right now you heard the DA say that they're not sure if there was even an injured 11-year-old at this time. So we're expected to hear more hopefully within the next 20 minutes or so. For now, reporting live outside of Penn Presbyterian Hospital, Annie McCormick, Channel 6, Action News. Back to you.
Yeah, and when you see how intense those flames are, you're hoping that an 11-year-old is not involved in what has now unfolded at the home there. Okay, Annie, thanks.
Thank you, Annie. All right, 14 minutes after the hour. Again, we are continuing to follow this breaking news story from East Lansdowne. Action News has been following this since the top of the 4 o'clock hour, and we continue to get more information as to what has unfolded here as we look live at the scene. Okay, this is earlier video from the scene, but we do know 2 officers, as we heard, recuperating at the hospital as tactical units have converged at this scene. Let's go back to Action News reporter Becca Hendrickson, still there, where we continue to get more information as to what exactly happened here on 58 Lewis Avenue this afternoon, Becca.
Rick, we are on Lewis Avenue, as you were just talking, and in the past hour and a half or so since I've been here, we've been moved back once because of safety from the fire, and I just talked to a police officer. They want to move us back again to an elementary school close by for a press conference. Hopefully at that point we'll get more information from both the district attorney, who of course we just heard from with John, and the chief are going to be talking about the events of this afternoon. But really what we're focused on right now is what police are doing, what firefighters are doing to continue to try to make this situation as safe as possible for the neighborhood with this fire that has been burning for over an hour now. Police continuing to dump water on it. I'm told this fire started about 15 minutes after police got here in the first place. Just to rehash again, they were of course called for reports of that 11-year-old shot. When the 2 officers from Lansdowne and East Lansdowne came onto the scene, were told that they were shot at immediately and that suspect went into the house. What we don't know at this point is who was in that house when the fire started. Of course, we were told the suspect went in there. The suspect, it's unknown whether that person got out or not, if they were inside, if that 11-year-old was inside, who else was in the house. Those 2 officers transported immediately to Penn Presbyterian Hospital, where we're told that they're in stable condition and they were talking. It appears they had some sort of leg wounds, but from then on it was a difficult situation for police, for firefighters, for all the emergency services throughout Delaware County who have been pouring onto the scene for over an hour now to decide at what point it was safe to fight this fire. And of course, as we're looking at the smoke, we can see how drastically it's changed over the past hour and a half, as it was everything was on fire. It was dark smoke coming out of there. The back of the house was collapsing. Cars were on fire. Nearby structures started to come on fire. And at this point, firefighters continue to dump water on it, trying to get this fire out. Again, hopefully, we are told we're going to be talking to the chief and the district attorney again soon, and we'll try to bring more information as we learn it from that.
All right. Becca, thank you very much. Stand by as we will continue to come back to you as more information becomes available where you are.
So this all began to unfold just before the 4 o'clock hour this afternoon. As we take a look at some of the video from that time of the day, officers, 911, first responders receiving a 911 call that there was an emergency. The DA of Delaware County telling us that they heard gunshots in the background, and that's when they responded to this home. Once on the scene, the DA says the police officers were immediately under fire. This video here shows you then the tactical units and the tactical technology that was brought in because the home was not secure. They weren't sure if the threat was over, knowing that this 911 call came in and then officers were fired upon. And just a short time later, then the house was on fire, and the DA believes a person inside started this fire on purpose.
Right. Again, fire crews had to move very cautiously because of that active shooter situation. At this hour now, we still don't know the status of that suspect. As we heard from the district attorney, Jack Stelzheimer, he could very well have perished in that house. But again, this is a crime scene. Police are still on the scene trying to determine exactly the status of also an 11-year-old child, whether or not there was even a child in the house. But so many unanswered questions at this hour. situation continuing to unfold, but certainly a crime scene here in East Lansdowne.
As you can imagine, those who live near this area, they are still trying to figure out exactly what's going on, and it's a terrifying situation if they're watching these images. Let's take a listen now to some of the neighbors we spoke with.
I heard a lot of gunshots as I just came from the store, and then I smelled the smoke like 10 minutes later, and I just seen cops from everywhere, coming from I'm running in their vest and everything.
Did you hear any yelling? Did you hear?
I heard yelling, active shooter, get in the house, barricade, don't come out.
That's what the cops were saying?
Active shooter, get in the house. And I closed my doors, and I got a 2-story.
Okay, just one of many neighbors who were just trying to find out exactly what was going on and may have heard the gunshots when it exploded. Back to John Paul now at the scene, and John, again, this remains a very fluid situation. Any new information since we last talked to you?
No, the newest information we had came directly from the district attorney, who I just saw walking down the street, chased him down and got that information, and you watched it live along with me as he explained what all led up to this. It started with a 911 call, a report, and I want to emphasize a report of an 11-year-old being shot. And I do want to mention, I talked to some neighbors who said they didn't know about an 11-year-old there. So that'll need to be cleared up, and that's what the DA was saying as well. He needs to make sure that there was actually an 11-year-old who was shot. They don't know that to be the case, but either way, police responded. And he says, the DA, as soon as police got on scene, they took gunfire. And that matches up with what neighbors have been telling me as well. Neighbors heard the gunshots, looked outside, they saw officers coming under fire, and the officers returned fire. Shortly thereafter, the fire started at that house. I'm going to step out of the way. The house still burning. You can see the smoke coming from that area. Now it looks like even a family is being let back in with a small child. So this tells me that the scene is under control. And that seems to be backing up what the DA was saying as well. They're just going to kind of have to wait until it's safe to go through what's left of that home and to find out if the shooter is alive. The way the DA said it, they don't know if the shooter burned up or not. But this is another soundbite we want to show you here from the DA just a short time ago. Let's take a listen. While we're waiting for that to come up, we just saw the mother and child walk maybe 4 houses down and go inside. So I'm not sure if they needed to retrieve something, but they were allowed to go through by the officers who have this whole area, this whole block is sealed off. They're not letting anyone through, but apparently they live here, so they must have needed to get something. And she did have a small child with her. She lives maybe 6 or 7 houses down on the other side. So I want to let you listen in on what the DA was telling me in the last 10 minutes.
The individual inside set fire to the house, and it's been burning for quite a while now. They are putting the fire under control, and then we're going to deal with whether or not the shooter is still alive inside the house. So it's still an active crime scene. There's a lot still going on out here.
There is still a lot going on out here right now. This is a firefighting operation with officers standing watch over what they are doing. They have to wait till they can put this whole thing out, and then they're going to have to go through what's left of that home. I mean, this is a crime scene. That is evidence. Though it may be burned up evidence, it is still evidence that'll be part of this entire investigation that'll start with that 911 call. The DA was saying in the 911 call in the background they could hear gunshots. That's why officers rushed to the scene, and then they came under fire themselves. They returned fire. We do not know who called 911. We also do not know the status of the person who was in that house who presumably set fire to that house. But those are all questions everyone is asking right now. We're hoping to hear more from the DA in about 30 minutes. He may have some more information for us. And again, we'll bring that live for you right here on Action News. So send it back to you guys.
Yeah, all of what he shared, though, vital updates that the DA was able to share and give us more context. John, thanks for getting that interview. We know that this was a harrowing situation, of course, for the officers involved. This is the video capturing one of the officers wounded and then being dragged to a safer space by his comrades and other officers.
Yeah, this is one of the first dramatic scenes that we saw when we first came on the air at 4 o'clock this afternoon, where there was words of 2 officers who were injured at the scene. This was one of them being dragged away from that house that was totally in flames, being brought into an ambulance, taken to the hospital. And the good news, as we've been able to discover, is that both officers are doing okay at this hour. They were conscious, they were alert, but again, police are still trying to determine exactly what transpired inside this home. Again, 58 Lewis Avenue, East Lansdowne, Delaware County. This is some of the video from earlier when the house was engulfed in flames. It's just a shell at this hour now, but again, so many dramatic moments that unfolded since the 4 o'clock hour. It is still a fluid scene. We're continuing to follow this breaking news story and bring you more information. Let's go to Action News reporter Annie McCormick again, who is still at the hospital with the very latest on the officers who were transported here. Annie.
Yeah, and Rick, within the past half hour is when the police chiefs from Lansdowne and East Lansdowne, and in addition to the Upper Darby police superintendent, all arrived here to the hospital. Right now, they are meeting with those officers who we've now learned are both in stable condition. We know that their families are here as well. We saw them brought to the scene. Obviously, a very emotional moment for them until they were able to actually see their loved ones and get into the hospital. At this point, we are also waiting for the district attorney who you just saw at the scene with John Paul a short time ago. We're expecting him to arrive here before they address the media as well. Like you have been reporting and like we heard from the scene, that both of those officers that were taken here did arrive to that home and they did face gunfire when they arrived. Both, we were told, were hit by gunfire, but again, they are in stable condition and they are talking and they are expected to be okay. Still so much information they're trying to sort out right now, and I don't even know if we're going to find out all of the details about exactly what is happening at the scene yet. When we are addressed by officials, they may just stay on the conditions of the officers and the assistance that they're receiving from other departments as well. Anytime in law enforcement always bands together. Of course, Philadelphia police were out here. The commissioner, Kevin Bethel, was out here. He left about 15 minutes ago with a number of top brass from the Philadelphia Police Department here to show their support and lend support as well. East Lansdowne and Lansdowne Police Departments are very small departments. Upper Darby is the largest city near them in Delaware County, which is why they're receiving assistance from Superintendent Tim Bernhardt as well. We just saw another Upper Darby police officer arrive here too. It could be for a separate incident, but they're still they're helping with traffic out here, the Philadelphia Police Department and also University of Pennsylvania Police as well. But again, like we said, the family members of those officers have arrived here. Officers did bring them here to see their loved ones. The prognosis is good for those police officers. And again, what they're also wondering right now is if everyone is okay for the scene that they arrived to. That is one thing that we're told that is still on their minds at this point as they're fulfilling their duty to protect and serve. Now reporting live outside of Penn Presbyterian Hospital, Annie McCormick, Channel 6, Action News.
Okay. Annie, thank you so much for the update from the hospital where the officers are recovering. Let's go back to the scene where it is still, of course, a very active situation. Action News reporter John Paul is right there as we see this tactical unit on the way. John, can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you. Yeah,
okay.
We got this tactical truck coming out here. They got a bunch of SWAT officers coming out, leaving the scene. They just came down the street from right out in front of that house. A lot of officers coming out of this particular vehicle here. We saw some other officers go off to my left and walk away. I'm not sure why the SWAT team is moving out this way, but I do know there's multiple teams down there. So maybe they're just going to kind of swap out, or maybe the situation is under control to the point where they can start moving some of these out of the way and getting some of these officers out of that area.
Yeah,
but yeah, not sure why they just drove through.
John, that they wanted to make sure as officers are moved back and forth that they're protected.
Yeah, it's obvious. It's definitely a bulletproof vehicle. It says police rescue there on the side. Heavily armed SWAT officers getting out of it, but now they're getting it out of the way. I mean, obviously, right now what they need is fire apparatus, and they have that down there. So I'm guessing they're going to move some of these first responder trucks out of the way because the threat, the shooting threat, seems to have subsided at this point, Shari.
Well, as we know, of course, as the DA was explaining, John, that it's believed that that suspect is likely in the house. And boy, we saw that house burn for quite a while. We know not much of it is left standing.
Yeah, I mean, there's nothing left. of that house. And the way the DA put it was he doesn't know if the suspect burned up, but they're going to find out. And first things first, they need to get everything put out of that fire. They need to make sure that they can get through and start looking at the debris and combing through it. This is a crime scene. And Shari, I know you've been on crime scenes before, Rick. I know you have as well. This is going to take a while. There is a lot of information that they need to gather from that house. They're going to be sifting through this debris with a fine-tooth comb to find everything that they need to find, and they need to find the evidence that they are looking for. So expect this area here of Lewis Avenue. This will be closed for a time to come. So it's also going to beg questions from neighbors when they're going to be allowed to go back to their homes as well. These are all questions that they're going to be asking tonight.
Yep.
You raise a good point about
Thank you,
it's a
John.
fire investigation, also a criminal investigation as well.
Yeah, this could be one of the biggest crime scenes to happen in this part of the county in a long time. So many law enforcement agencies converging here. We're back live now as we look from the chopper of the home that continues to burn, the billowing smoke escaping into the evening air. Fire crews finally able to tackle the fire, but as we've been reporting since 4 o'clock, it took a while for them to move close to the house because there were reports of an active shooter who had somehow holed himself inside, and they were just for safety purposes. Law enforcement proceeded cautiously, fire crews proceeding cautiously, but right now we are watching as they continue to tackle the fire at what was this home here. It's now just the remains, the fiery, smoky remains of what was a family home, but more information continuing to unfold here as we heard from the district attorney. And we've heard from our reporters at the scene that there may not have been a child in the house. The whole thing apparently happened when there was a 911 call this afternoon of an 11-year-old apparently had been shot. We heard from the district attorney that that might not have happened, and that when officers did arrive, a gunman opened fire. 2 officers were hit, rushed to the hospital where they are recuperating, and that is what has brought us here to now, 5:31 the time now. We're continuing to follow this breaking news story here on Action News at 5, continuing to follow the information that's unfolding and bringing you the latest pictures, and also a neighborhood that has suddenly exploded into chaos and drama, and we're hearing from so many people trying to understand exactly what happened as police officers and fire crews tackle this dangerous situation here in East Lansdowne, Pennsylvania.
Yeah, this is Action News at 5 with Rick Williams and Shari Williams as we are covering this shooting. 2 officers being injured while responding to an emergency call. They were doing their job, and when they arrived on this address, they took on fire, according to the district attorney of Delaware County. The live images now from the aerial showing you all of the training that these firefighters have gone through. This definitely a very different type of call. When they first were brought in, they were told to stand back because they weren't sure if there was still a threat in this home, knowing that shots had been fired here, again at 58 East Lewis Avenue in East Lansdowne. So the firefighters had to stand back for quite a while. Once they were finally able to get up close, they're doing their job now to really get those hot spots out, but we still see all of this smoke billowing in this neighborhood, which I'm sure neighbors have not seen something like this before.
Yeah, and as we can tell from our chopper vantage point, just how close the houses are in this neighborhood, and that neighbors, again, trying to understand exactly what has happened on their street here on Lewis Avenue. And it will be some time before we actually find out exactly what happened, what transpired inside of this home, or what kind of violence might have taken place, if any at all. But again, so many unanswered questions that are slowly but surely being answered here at the scene and here in East Lansdowne. Let's go back to Action News reporter Becca Hendrickson, live at the scene now, continuing to get more information as we go into the evening hour. Becca.
Rick, we are still watching as police and firefighters continue to put this fire out. I want to give you a look behind me because while we may be further away than we were previously, you can still see so much of this smoke that's coming out of the home. Based on the color of it in a conversation that I just had, I am told that the fire is mostly out at this point. But as for what is inside that home, is unknown, and it could be you know, we just don't know at this point what that could be, because when that fire started, it was minutes after we're told that that suspect fired on police and went back into the house. So we don't know if that suspect ever made it out. We don't know the status of that 11-year-old who was initially a part of this. Was the initial call was for the shooting of an 11-year-old. So this crime scene is one that police are going to have to process, and it's one that first responders and police from all over Delaware County are focusing on right now. I do know that the police chief and the district attorney were on their way over to Penn Presbyterian, or they just arrived, hoping to get a updated status on those police officers and give us some more information soon, and then they'll come back here to the scene as we still process all of this information. But you can see just how astounding this is, just how many different pieces of apparatus, how many different police and firefighters we have here from all over the county. That smoke still high in the air. A lot of these neighbors still concerned, that people trying to figure out exactly what happened. Those horrifying moments around 3:50 p.m. when that first 911 call came in, according to that initial conversation from the district attorney, where you could hear those shots in that 911 call, and then police getting to the scene, immediately being fired upon, those officers being taken to Penn Presbyterian, where again we're told that they're in stable condition, that they're talking, they suffered some sort of leg wound, and then that suspect going back into the house and that fire breaking out just a couple minutes later. That fire that burned for over an hour and a half now, as firefighters and police finally deemed it safe enough to try to put out. You can see the emergency services truck here, of course some fire trucks in this distance. It's going to be a long night here in East Lansdowne as police and investigators try to piece together exactly what happened here. A horrifying scene, really.
Absolutely. Becca, quick question before we let you go. Do you get the sense from where you are that there is a concerted lack of urgency now as to compared to when you first arrived on the scene? You know, you and John both saw the rushing police cars and SWAT teams passing you by as you were heading here. Do you get the sense now as we go into this evening that there's more of a not that the situation is over, because it isn't, but there's a more of a less of an urgent situation than there was maybe an hour and a half ago?
I would agree with that, Rick, and part of the reason why, from what we've seen, a couple of the police and first responders that were here, that were filling up this block of Lewis Avenue, you can see even it looks a little more empty right now. A couple of those cars were able to pull away. We've also seen some of the officers who were initially up at that house on 58 Lewis Avenue. Some of them have been able to walk away as well, a little more casually, not like, of course, when we first got here, when we saw all of those sirens blaring, all of those people screaming into the scene. So a much different type of attitude on the scene here now, and that's displayed too just in the fact that firefighters were able to start dumping water on this fire. There was a threat here for a long time, and there still could be, of course, with the fire, but the other threat was the active shooter who retreated into the house. So emergency services had to figure a lot of that out. If it were safe to start dumping water on that house, who exactly could have been in that house, and if more first responders were going to be put in danger responding to this house, since as soon as those two initial police officers got here, they were immediately shot at.
Yeah, and it appears, Beck, as we are taking a live look from the aerial and from the ground, the epicenter of this entire thing, that structure on fire. But it looks like also the home next door is now suffering some damage, and they're also trying to put out a few cars that are also on fire. Becca, stand by. We'll be back in touch with you in a moment. Let's go now to Action News reporter John Paul, who's on the other side of this of the neighborhood across from where Becca is. And so, John Paul, what's your vantage point from where you are?
Well, the smoke has dissipated here in the last maybe 30 minutes or so. And we've seen a lot of officers leaving the area. A lot of the outside agencies seem to be leaving the area. I'll step out of the way. You can still see some still going in, but we just saw a neighbor come out. Well, I guess I can't call her a neighbor. She was visiting her neighbor who lives right by where the shooting happened. So we stopped and talked with her. She said that they were unloading groceries and they started to hear the gunshots. That's when the officers arrived and more gunfire. They did not know what to do. They all ran inside and they stayed put. They have stayed there until just about 5 minutes ago when officers said it was safe for them to get out of their house and leave the area. She said she was frightened the entire time. She didn't know who was shooting. All she knew was she kept hearing gunshots and she needed to get to safety. She just was allowed to leave the area, which is telling me that this is under control. This is a secure scene. They're letting neighbors out. In fact, I've actually seen some people starting to walk down, some civilians walking over that way, and it looks like there might even be a neighbor out on her porch now. Maybe I can see if I can make my way down there and talk to her. But that visitor leaving the area, she just wanted to go home. She had been staying put for, what, 2 hours or so? She was just able to leave in the last couple of minutes. Shari, Rick.
All right, John, thank you. We should mention that we're waiting a news conference to take place at the hospital where the two officers were transported. They are hospitalized at this hour, both recovering from their wounds at this scene. As we continue to look live from above the situation, more information coming our way, but when those news conferences gets underway at Penn Presbyterian Hospital, we will take that to you. But in the meantime, again, an army of fire crews still at the scene, tackling what was an inferno at this home here on Lewis Avenue. As we've been hearing from our reporters, the situation a lot calmer than it was just in about an hour and 40 minutes ago. But again, so many questions that need to be answered, and specifically the status of that active shooter that kind of started this whole drama. We want to hear from a neighbor who was here at the scene on this street when we first arrived, and just some of the sentiments from the people who lived here earlier this afternoon. Let's take a listen to that.
I just saw a lot of gunshots, heard a lot of gunshots as I just came from the store. And then I smelled the smoke like 10 minutes later, and I just seen cops from everywhere, coming from everywhere. I'm running in their vest and everything. I heard yelling, active shooter, get in the house, barricade, don't come
That's
out.
what the cops were saying?
Active shooter, get in the house. I did see one officer get loaded into the back of the ambulance.
Yeah.
I think that wasn't the one that was dragged away. There was another one. It looked like he was holding his hand.
Yeah, neighbors, of course, gathering all the information they can from what they can see, from what they can hear, and a lot of it just pure shock. This gentleman here just going about his day, running his errands, and then this is what he returned to the neighborhood to see and to find. When we talk about the timeline of all of this, just before 4 o'clock, a 911 call coming in here in East Lansdowne. The operator hearing gunshots in the background, then sent first responders. This at 58 Lewis Avenue, East Lansdowne. Those officers, once arriving on the address, were shot at. 2 of those officers, we are now learning, were injured, and they are recovering at Penn Presbyterian Hospital. After the shots were fired, we then know that the house began to smoke.
Right.
And so the belief is whoever fired those shots went back in this home and started a fire.
Yeah, earlier we weren't sure how the fire may have started when officers arrived on the scene, but as we were able to confirm from District Attorney DA Jack Stolheimer, the active shooters purposefully started the fire inside the house, and which kept fire crews at bay for several minutes because of that active shooter situation. But right now they've been tackling the fire. The house is again just a shell of what it was, and the investigation now underway as to exactly where that active shooter is, if he's even alive, whether there was an 11-year-old child inside the home, which again caused that initial 911 call, and just again a crime scene that continues to unfold this hour here in East Lansdowne. So many law enforcement agencies that had arrived here, that had converged here, have now been taken away. The situation not as urgent, but again, it's still a crime scene, and it will be that way throughout the evening as we continue to follow this breaking news story.
Let's go now to Action News reporter Annie McCormick, who is there at Penn Presbyterian where the officers were taken. And Annie, one of the things that we were talking about is how law enforcement, they look out for each other. They know what it's like to be in the line of fire. And when this call came in from East Lansdowne, Philadelphia police then made the streets in a way where they could get this officer, both of them, to the hospital quickly.
Yeah, and even within Delaware County, too, Shari, they were assisting because East Lansdowne's Police Department and Lansdowne's Police Department are very small. There's only several officers in each of those departments. So Upper Darby Police, which is the larger borough around there, also stepped in to help with their superintendent, bringing the police chiefs over here to the hospital to see both of their officers that were brought here just before 4 o'clock. Now, and also Philadelphia Police, like you were saying, making sure that the streets were open, that they could get here quickly. All of that communication they had so that way they could be brought here as quick as possible. Of course, East Lansdowne, only about 3.5 miles from Penn Presbyterian Hospital. This is the #1 trauma hospital, though, the closest to them. So this is naturally where they would be brought. We are still waiting for the district attorney to arrive here. He should be here at any moment, but before he will address the media, he will, of course, go upstairs and talk to at least the family members of those officers and probably those officers as well. Right now, within the past 45 minutes, the East Lansdowne and Lansdowne chiefs, along with Upper Darby Superintendent Tim Bernhardt, all went inside to speak to those officers and also speak to their families as well. We, of course, will want to know how they are doing, their conditions. We're told that they're stable, that they're expected to be okay, that they are conscious, that they are talking. But there's going to be a lot of questions, too, that the police departments will have for those officers and the district attorney's office as well that we will not learn right away, because those will all be part of this investigation that is still unfolding. What we do know is when both of those officers did respond to that home, as we're hearing from John Paul and additionally Becca Hendrickson as well, they were met with gunfire. Both of them were shot and they were brought here. At this point, I know there's a little activity going on behind me right now, so I know some people are arriving. Who is that? Okay, District Attorney Stolzheimer, as you can see, Albert's going to zoom in right there. He just arrived here to the emergency room, so he will now go upstairs and he will talk to those officers, find out information, and then together we are expecting for both of the police chiefs from each of the departments of the injured officers will then come down with him, and additionally Upper Darby's police superintendent as well, to give us a little bit more information. There's still so many questions about exactly what happened out there, what exactly was going on inside of the home. We don't even know if we'll get all of those answers yet at this point. The good news is that we do hear that both of those officers are stable, are talking, and are able to talk to their loved ones who have arrived here as well. But we're hoping to hear more information. I'm giving a guesstimate about probably 20 minutes that the district attorney will probably come downstairs to address the media as well. We'll bring that to you live, of course. For now, reporting live outside of Penn Presbyterian Hospital, Annie McCormick, Channel 6, Action News.
All right, Annie, thank you. And just confirm something before we let you go, that these two officers, they were from two different departments, correct? They weren't partners, but they were from two different jurisdictions who just happened to arrive at the scene simultaneously, correct?
Correct. And just to give you an idea, too, you know, in Delaware County, East Lansdowne and Lansdowne are right next to each other. They're very small departments, and so many of those towns and boroughs all around in that area, you know, Folecroft, Darby, Sharon Hill, East Lansdowne, Lansdowne, they're all small departments, but they all help each other out. And Upper Darby is really the largest one. Chester also is the largest one. They kind of sandwich each other around a lot of those smaller boroughs, and so they're always helping each other out, always willing to assist. We often see Upper Darby assisting a lot of those smaller Delaware County boroughs consistently, even responding to calls as well.
All right. Annie McCormick, live from the hospital. We will go back to you when that news conference gets underway. Thank you very much, and stand by.
Yeah, we're also expecting a possible news update, news conference closer to the scene in Delaware County as well. I'm sure the neighbors and those who live in that area are going to want to know as much as possible, as this is impacting them firsthand. Those who are on the scene, who can smell the smoke, who've seen the flames, who have wondered if their neighbors are okay. And of course, those who may know this area, who've been just watching it unfold since before 4 this afternoon.
Absolutely, and we continue to hear from some of the neighbors that we talked to earlier about what happened when they realized that something was amiss on this street here in Lewis Avenue. Let's hear from a woman that we talked to earlier this afternoon, that when she realized that the scene, her neighborhood, was certainly had become chaotic.
I just heard a lot of shots. I thought they were shots, but there were so many, and they were so spread apart, and they went on for so long that I thought there was no way they could be gunshots. and people were playing in their front yards. There were kids outside. I think most people were under the impression that they couldn't be gunshots. And then as soon as I turned onto Baltimore Ave, police and rescue vehicles came. When I first arrived, it was really active, and there were a lot of police taking cover and running down that way. So I hid in that kitchen. I went into that kitchen store, and they locked the door, and we hung out there for a little bit.
You went into a business, and they locked you in to protect you.
Yes.
Wow. You know, we report and cover so much violence, but when then it's on your street and you're responding to it. She talked about children being outside, people going about their daily life, playing in the front yard. And for her, she could hear these shots, these succession of gunshots just while she was traveling in her vehicle.
Exactly. We talked to one neighbor, said he was sitting on his couch watching television, and he heard gunfire and looked out his window and suddenly saw a police officer being dragged away from the scene. So many neighbors will have so many different stories to tell about what transpired here in their neighborhood in East Lansdowne, Pennsylvania, just after 4 o'clock this afternoon. It's been almost 2 hours now that we've been following the story, that police have been converging here along with fire crews, continuing to determine exactly what happened. This is a crime scene, still a fluid situation, still so many questions to answer as to what exactly happened. But again, there is good news. The status of those 2 officers who were shot, recuperating at the hospital. And again, we're waiting for a news conference to take place there. We'll go to it once it does. But once again, live here in East Lansdowne as we look from our chopper vantage point, as fire crews continue to hose down hot spots, as this house continues to crumble and become just a shell of what was a family home, but is now just a dilapidated crime scene.
Yeah, and as we talk about the hot spots, the firefighters here have been working on this vehicle for quite a while. We know, of course, it likely has gasoline, and they've been tending to that hot spot. They are, and the fire isn't out, but it is under control. And we know once it is out and safe enough to go inside, that criminal investigation is going to go into the next gear, because they are right now trying to figure out the person who fired at their officers. Where is that person and who is that person?
Absolutely. Anytime there's an active shooter situation, police and fire crews, emergency units have to be very, very cautious when they approach. All right, let's go back to Action News reporter John Paul, live at the scene down below with the very latest from his vantage point. John.
Yeah, Rick, sorry, the smell is really dissipated from that fire. It looks like they have this thing just about completely out. I don't even see any smoke coming from that area at all, but I have seen firefighters, I've seen SWAT officers, police officers all exiting this area. They're coming our way. They're getting into their vehicles. They're starting to wrap up their hoses. This scene seems secure. We have actually noticed more helicopters coming in, though. Looks like at least one police helicopter flying very low over the scene. But many officers have been leaving that area and coming our way. They are wrapping things up. A lot of the departments that came to help out from other jurisdictions, they seem to be the ones who are leaving first. But there obviously are still a lot of officers still right there in front of that crime scene, keeping it secure. They have not let any of us go beyond this point right here. Even though the tape has come down, they're asking us to stay back from the area. Of course, we're going to respect that. This is an active crime scene. There are still officers down there, but many are leaving. So it does look like the bulk of this is over. The scene is definitely secured. It's a different feeling now here. People are exiting and wrapping things up here on the scene. That is the latest information as I have it, standing right here on Baltimore, just half a block away from the scene.
Well, John, when they got there, it was top of the 4 o'clock hour, and there was plenty of sunshine. Now it's about to be nightfall for the first responders to do their best to continue their work. Have you taken note of any command center, any movement for them to prepare to work on this through the evening?
That's a really good question, and it seems to me the command center is basically what you're looking at. It's down the street. I did see several higher-ups coming our way. They must be debriefing. A lot of people have been leaving this scene, though. But as for a command center, no, not set up where I am. as we're watching here, more firefighters are walking our way. There's still a lot of water that's running down this street, though. I mean, the storm drain is backing up. There's so much water. So there's definitely still water being poured onto whatever is left of that house. But the scene is under control. Many of the firefighters are leaving. And this is going to become now a scene for the investigators to comb through and to find that evidence that they need in this situation, so they can find out what happened to the person who was in that house, who authorities are saying fired on officers. Where is he? Was there an 11-year-old child involved in any of this? That was one of the big questions that the district attorney was asking. Was there really an 11-year-old who was shot? That was the initial 911 call that came in. And the debris is going to hold the answer to those questions.
It's going to be interesting to see.
This will be an active scene for a long time.
Yeah, going to be interesting to see then how they'll work this into the nightfall, as we've been on these scenes before, and they bring in the large floodlights, just depending on you know, how far along they want to get in this investigation tonight, especially getting to that suspected shooter.
Yeah, but the good news is, John, and again, thank you for your update. As day turns to night here in this neighborhood, the urgency has dissipated. It's just a crime scene that police and fire crews continue to focus on. But again, it's less of a dramatic scene than it was just 2 hours ago, when neighbors didn't understand what was going on, and police officers, again, being kept at bay along with fire crews because of this active shooter situation.
We want to get a quick update to Action News reporter Walter Perez, who is now also near the scene. Walter.
Hey guys, I'm here with a gentleman named Ed O'Neill, who lives on the block a few houses away from where the whole thing occurred. And just walk me through what you saw today driving back home earlier.
Well, driving home, I saw the police, followed quickly by the fire trucks, and then I saw the smoke coming nearby, and I realized it was close to my home. Caught up in all the traffic trying to get away from that, and then walked up here, and it was a crime scene. I was unaware that anything about the shooting. I was unaware of anything, essentially, except that a fire was happening. And here we are. Now I find out that there's been a shooting, and it's terrible.
And I was going to say, at that moment, you didn't know what was going on. Now you do. What is your reaction to know this was a few houses away?
I'm devastated. I'm shocked. I really am. No words.
Thank you. I do appreciate your time.
Sure.
So once again, guys, that's the situation at this location, about a block away from the home. We'll have much more coming up on Action News at 6. Reporting live from East Lansdowne, Walter Perez, Channel 6, Action News.
All right, Walter, thank you. And we will continue to follow this story on Action News at 6. Want to take one more shot from our chopper at the scene? All right, let's do that again. Fire crews still on the scene, battling what was left of this house. Billowing smoke still escaping to the night sky now. It has been 2 hours since they have converged here. But again, it is an active crime scene, and you can still see some hot spots still needing to be taken care of here at this house. Again, it was 58 Lewis Avenue, East Lansdowne. But we're continuing to follow the scene as we continue to move into Action News at 6.
Yeah, it has been all hands on deck for those who are in the fire departments in this area, and also for police who've all responded to this. They've come from all over to be a part of this investigation. 2 officers injured responding to a shooting in East Lansdowne.
All right.
That's it for Action News at 5. For Rick Williams, I'm Shari Williams. Action News at 6 is coming up next.
All right, thanks for joining us.
My son was failing. It's very disheartening. Huntington has changed my son's life. Because of Huntington, my son now has straight A's and B's. It's priceless.
Huntington Learning Center. For tutoring and test prep, call 1-800-CAN-LEARN today.
And the first rule of marketing, never do the same thing twice.
I gotta do the Kick of Destiny again.
What?
But this time, fans can pick if I'll make or miss for $10 million.
Interesting.
And right now, new customers bet $5 and get $200 in bonus bets if you win.
Let's do it.
Wait, were we gonna use the Do Guy this year?
Should I go? I'm doing the kick again. You're gonna miss, Gronk.
Bet $5 and get $200 in bonus bets if you win. The Kick of Destiny 2, live Super Bowl Sunday. Make your free pick now on FanDuel.
We needed Huntington to catch our kids up in school.
I was struggling with math and reading, and Huntington really helped me.
Our investment in Huntington was 100% worth it. Having a partner like Huntington has been exactly what our family needed.
Call 1-800-CAN-LEARN today.
6ABC reminds you to remove valuable items from your car every night.
Action News, Delaware Valley's leading news program, with Deuces Rogers, meteorologist Cecily Tynan, and Brian Taft.
This was the scene some 90 minutes ago as flames ravaged an East Lansdowne home, the focus of a tense and dangerous standoff. It all unfolded over the course of roughly an hour this afternoon, beginning with a call of a child shot in that home along Lewis Avenue, escalating the shots fired at officers, and ending with that home all but destroyed. The condition of that child reportedly shot still unknown tonight. It is Wednesday night, and the big story on Action News tonight is the chaotic ordeal you watch play out live here this afternoon. 2 officers shot, a house destroyed, a neighborhood taking cover. A live look now, a helicopter over the scene, what remains of that home, 58 Lewis Avenue in East Lansdowne, reduced to ashes. Officers, we now know, responded here just before 4 o'clock today, hearing word that an 11-year-old had been shot inside. When they got there, the officers came under fire themselves, then returned fire. 2 of those officers shot in that exchange, both taken to Penn Presbyterian Hospital. What played out then was an